But now, housing is a problem. Kuna watu wanaolaka cheo hapana mganga, hapana mvura, hapana matele system, hakuna zote zote. But now, housing is a problem. Kuna watu wanaolaka cheo hapana mganga, hapana mvura, hapana matele system, hakuna zote zote.
Ivura takafira nderipi Thank you and welcome to Heart and Soul TV and Radio on this broadcast on the situation right now, proudly brought to you by Heart and Soul TV and Radio in proud partnership with Transparency International Zimbabwe. Now, today we're going to be discussing a somewhat emotive issue, an emotive issue to many Zimbabweans, an emotive issue even to those of us who our parents who survived during the colonial era. Now, this is an issue of land. Land is at the heart of most people in this country. But today we are just going to be focusing on urban areas. And to help us discuss this very important topic, I'm joined by Councilor from Bulawayo, Rodney Jele. He's from the city of Bulawayo, Mtutu, but I'm not sure if there's anything that is still smoking in that city. I'm also joined by the mayor of Mutare, where we have some of the cleanest water coming from the hot springs of Mutare, and a very scenic city. And also to help us discuss this is Devson, who is also an expert in terms of understanding issues around land in the urban areas. Now in Zimbabwe, land in the urban areas has been a serious problem. There have been allegations that councillors are at the center of plundering, corruptly getting land and making themselves rich. Obviously, the councillors and the mayors have denied these allegations. But there's also other allegations that the state has used land as a political weapon and has been settling people haphazardly and illegally, affecting how local authorities provide service to the people, especially water, roads, and sewer. So we are joined by the people who drive this process. Now, I'm going to start with you, Councillor Rodney. In Bulawayo, what are your major challenges with handling the land issue?
Okay. First of all, you need to realize, let me start off by greeting everyone, the viewers. Good day to you all. Like my brother said, I'm Councilor Rodney Jele, Councilor Bulawayo, Ward 22, and that's in Kulumane. That's where my ward is. You'll obviously realize that we have got challenges. As a city, currently the city is not growing. So in terms of land, we have a shortage of land. But as you are aware that our constitution is saying that in 2023, we need to increase in terms of the city by 40 kilometers. So we are facing a challenge of peri-urban settlement that is there right around the city. You talk of your Mtunzini areas, your Mbundane areas, and you realize that currently Mbuza cannot service those areas. So they are just settling people there, and obviously creating congestion into the city because they are right around our boundaries. So in turn, we are now saying those are Bulawayo people, as much as they don't have services, they don't have water, they don't have sewerage. So that's the major challenge that is affecting our city. Then the other challenge that we have is the Couch Park area. you realize that Couch Park area was as a result of Mrambatswina, where government was settling people in Couch Park. It was a government program, but they've since handed over to council. We've got a challenge that it's now the biggest suburb in Bulawayo. But almost 3/4 of it, they don't have water, they don't have sewer, because the government just settled people without any servicing. So in Bulawayo, our policy is no one's supposed to settle where there is no water and where there is no sewer. But in Couch Park area, you discover that 3/4 of the area, people are already living in, they built houses, they're already living there. But those places don't have sewer, they don't have water. So these are our major challenges in terms of the areas that the recently settled areas and the peri-urban areas.
No, thank you very much, Councillor Rodney, for that. But I'll come to you, Mayor in Mutare. Just before I bring in Dr. Devson, but Mayor, I just passed through Mutare just a few days ago while I was going to Chipinge, and I saw some amazing houses being built on top of the mountains that you have surrounding your city. But just tell us, what are the biggest challenges that you have in terms of management of urban and peri-urban land in your jurisdiction, Mayor?
Thank you very much for asking and for also bringing me to this program. I really appreciate the gesture. First and foremost, I would like to allude to the fact that we have got two land authorities in Zimbabwe, which is the local authorities and the state. And when we allude to the two authorities, we somehow in competition in how we are parceling out that land. If you have recently observed the emergence of other locations, especially in the peri-urban areas, you realize that there are a lot of sprouting settlements, especially on the state lands. And it's somehow in competition with the local authorities that may be parceling out land within in Mutare, whereby we have got sprouting locations being done by the rural district councils surrounding the city. And some of them are unplanned settlements of people who are just coming in to settle themselves closer to the city with the intention most probably of being ratified or being incorporated into the city as we grow. Most probably, yes, like you asked, most probably in Mutare, whereby we are now in the Christmas past, you may realize that the construction that is happening there. Yes, we are really giving out land as per the statutes that to offer pieces of land for residential, for commercial and industrial purposes within our jurisdiction. So we are, but like I alluded in the challenge that we have with the competition with the state land, you may realize some of the other locations, like what Councillor Jerry has spoken about, the issue of the locations that were erected during the Mrambatswina era, the Garikai Shalani Kule being an example of locations that are, as of now, not fully developed to the standards that we anticipate in this 21st century as projects that are being done, especially by the central government. We are looking also at projects. I'd like to allude to a project like in Mutare, whereby we have a People's Homeless Federation project that was being done in conjunction with People's Homeless Federation. And that project, as of now, is still incomplete, and people are just settled anyhow. Why? Is because there are issues whereby groups are just fighting one another, and they are not in agreement in how they will be able to parcel out that piece of land. And as of now, it's an undeveloped settlement whereby majority of the people there have settled illegally. They have no sewer, they have no water, and it's a time bomb, no roads whatsoever. And we cannot say that that's an urban settlement as we speak right now, but that's more of a rural and primitive settlement within our structures. And that is a time bomb in terms of healthy services and even on the growth of our city. Because whenever people settle first, it will be difficult and expensive for us to have the infrastructure in place. And like I alluded, that we've got two authorities, which is the state land and local authority land. The state is parceling out land in most of our peri-urban sites, or within the vicinity or the boundaries of the city, as in taking away the mandate, most probably that should be accorded to the city, especially on our master plans, whereby we'll be growing outside our jurisdiction further to other areas within our periphery. But because those species of land will be state land, you may realize that majority of that land will have been parceled out to substandard organizations, be parceling out land without even developing. Us as a local authority, with that into account, I would like to cite an example of the Caledonia of Harare, the Gimboki of Mutare, that are still unserviced as we speak right now, as a result of political interference and maybe political interest as well within the same jurisdiction. And those pieces of land, some of them are state lands and some of them are local authority lands. So some of these things are being done as a way of promoting maybe.
Yes, Mayor, I'll come back to you as you are now going into the other questions that I prepared to ask you. So I'll just come back to you, but I want to bring in Dr. Devson Muchadenyika right now. Now, Dr. Devson Muchadenyika is an urban planning specialist, and he has worked with cities and municipalities in Kenya, Mozambique, South Africa, Namibia, Zambia, Sierra Leone, and Zimbabwe. Now, he has also written 5 book chapters and more than 12 articles on peer-reviewed journals in peri-urban planning. Now, Devson, sorry, we had to wake you up very early in the morning where you are. But Devson, you've had the city fathers speaking, and having worked in Zimbabwe as well. Where do we locate the serious problem of managing land in Zimbabwe, especially peri-urban and urban areas?
Thanks very much, Blessed. And I will start from acknowledging the contributions from the mayor and the councillor. I think we locate them from a number of issues. One is to deal with the land institutional arrangements. As has been alluded before, we do have rural district councils that are responsible for certain pieces of land. We also have traditional leaders that are responsible for certain pieces of land. We also have the president, who is responsible in particular for communal land. Then in urban areas, we do have the council and also the Ministry of Local Government that is responsible for state land. So what then happens is the challenge then becomes at the boundaries of the city to say who is responsible. We know that those are rural district councils, but rural district councils have no specific planning powers. For instance, they cannot subdivide, they cannot perform master planning. So what is then happening at the peri-urban land is that development is actually preceding proper town planning processes. So the challenge then becomes to say, how do we deal with that? There are a number of considerations that we can look at. Secondly, we can also locate it at the land delivery process. So before 2000, the land delivery process was like the Ministry of Lands responsible for land. We actually acquire certain pieces of land. It hands over the land to the Ministry of Local Government. The Ministry of Local Government issues what is called a deed of grant to local authorities. They would issue the land for free to local authorities for onward planning, development, and allocation. That was pre-2000. But after 2000, for political economy reasons, that ceased to exist. So from 2000 up to now, there is no single piece of land that was transferred from the Ministry of Local Government to the city of Harare, neither for the city of Bulawayo. So the land delivery process changed, and it's now affecting in terms of the processes that we are speaking to. The third aspect, we look at it on policy-wise. there was a policy called parallel development that was adopted by most of our local authorities, City of Harare in July 2006, and also the national government in the National Housing Policy 2012. So parallel development is allowing communities, in particular housing cooperatives, to begin to develop the land. That is building houses before the actual construction of completion of roads. So what we have seen is that in most settlements, you see water might be there, sewer might be there, but then road construction is stalled for some time. So it's a combination of institutional arrangements of land, the land delivery process, and also the policies that the national government and the local authorities have enacted to deliver over time. And lastly, I will point in terms of the policies or the resolutions that have been adopted between 2009 and 2013. In particular, the City of Harare, they made it a policy that every cooperative that wanted to access land from the city's land bank, they had to receive what is called a written recommendation from the council. So ordinarily, that deeply politicized the process. Before that, and after 2014, the city had to change in terms of its policy perspective. The responsibility of land allocation rests with the director responsible for housing and community services. Those are the four aspects that I would look at the challenges that we are facing in as far as urban land is concerned.
Thank you, Dr. Devson. Allow me to call you Devson for the purposes of this interview. Yes, yeah. While I just want to acknowledge that the Harare Mayor has just joined us, Harare Acting Mayor Stuart Mtizwa. Thank you very much, Mayor, for joining us at this moment. I'll just come back to you, Councillor Rodney. Now, Councillor, I want to locate councillors in the mix.
Yes.
Your problem. You have been accused as councillors of stealing land, of corruptly acquiring land for your own benefit and prejudicing these residents. Can you talk to us about that? Why are you stealing land?
we are not stealing, my brother. I think first of all, you need to understand that we have got what we call benefits that we are given by the minister, where the minister says that we are supposed to get, if you have got the funds, we are supposed to get a residential stand as a 40% discount, and also get it's either industrial or commercial stand. This one you pay the full amount. But also you need to understand that being a councillor doesn't mean that you are no longer a resident of that particular local authority. So you are equally a resident, even as much as you are a councillor. So you are also entitled, if you have got the money, to buy whatever land is available. For instance, if there are tenders, you compete like anyone else. If you win the tender, you pay the full amount. So you are not stealing because you benefit from a ministerial directive. Then secondly, you benefit as a resident of that particular local authority. So as councillors, we are not allowed to even sell land to anyone. Whoever wants land, we refer them to our directors, to the officials. Those are the people that do the administrative work. I'm not allowed for people to come into my office and I issue or pencil out land to them.
So it's lies that as councillors you actually have maps in your house where you can actually tell friends and colleagues to choose where to pick a stand.
No, for instance, in Bulawayo, what we only have, for instance, I only have the map for my ward, for obvious reasons, that for me to easily identify maybe certain numbers, household numbers, but I don't have that map which tells me that this land is vacant or which land is not vacant, and I cannot choose for someone to go and occupy this particular place.
No, thank you.
So in Bulawayo, maybe it differs with other local authorities. As councillors in Bulawayo, you are only given a map for your own particular ward.
Thank you. Now, we're joined by His Worship, the Mayor of Harare, Acting Mayor of Harare, Councilor Stuart Mtizwa. Councilor, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Sorry for being late. I was having problems on joining.
No, that's wonderful. But as we continue, Mayor, can you just tell us what are the major problems around land in Harare city? I mean, you have lost a lot of councillors in Harare who have been arrested. You have lost a lot of directors who have been arrested over issues of corrupt allocation of land. So can you just speak to us about the challenges that you face?
The challenges that we face, there's a whole lot of them, but however, let me just hasten to mention the topical ones. Land in Harare, we have got 3 to 4 types of land. There's land owned by council, land owned by the government, and land owned by private. But however, the major problems were people identifying our land and then going into cahoots with our officials and drawing their site plans. With those site plans, now you go and look for beneficiaries. They will charge them whatever they were charging. They form some cooperatives, they invade the land, and that's number one, the invasion and the land grabbing. Number two, it was actually a syndicate from internal, where the officials, the planners, and whatever were involved, and having to go around now selling pieces of land with site plans ready for signing or ready for approval. So people will now be told what to buy and where to go. But however, those issues backfires now because they would not have proper authorization to procure those pieces of land. And the issues that has so far affected our councillors are issues where I hear my colleague councillor in Bulawayo was saying, where a councillor is not at law allowed to allocate any land or be involved in the allocation or selling of land. So some of our councillors were then involved in the selling of those pieces of land by either advising or writing to our officers to say, allocate Mr. So and so a piece of land. That is not allowed. If you are to do it, maybe you can do it behind the scenes and it mustn't be known at all. If it is known, it is a criminal offense. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Thandi, we have seen a lot of times where councils start demolishing land, start demolishing finished houses because they then call them illegal settlements. They go to court to try and demolish houses. But where will you be when the structures are coming up? Won't you be involved corruptly in allowing these structures to take shape before you start trying to demolish them?
Most of the times, those structures will be built, some overnight, I want to be honest. Some are built overnight. And now because we are sitting on a judgment, the Bajuga judgment, where it says no council, no authority that can demolish a finished house. Once it is a finished house, you have to look for a court order to demolish it. And there are also steps, even if you see someone constructing, you have to give them 48-hour notices of stopping the construction. But within 48 hours, those houses will be houses and complete. The reason why you are now seeing when the rains come, those houses are giving in, and some of them are destroyed just by a very simple hailstorm.
Yeah, but I want the same. I want Mayor from Mutare, Mayor Tandi, to respond to that before I interrogate some of the responses. Why do you wait for whole locations, whole settlements to be up before you start demolishing them, before you start going to court to demolish them?
Like I alluded in my last presentation, whereby, you know, we are living in a political environment as we speak right now. Yes, statutes here and there. When I'm speaking of statutes, I'm looking at pieces of land that are, are owned by the local authority, and people do come and invade those pieces of land, maybe based on a special use that will be there. But whenever the local authority wants to try and come in and maybe stop the construction, they are met with a lot of political interventions, and then they won't be able to demolish that. But, always the demolition, if you check very well, if you check on the trend, it comes in with a political will. When there's no political will, at times you cannot be able to demolish those structures unless there is political will. So the issue that I'm talking about in this regard is the issue of politics at play and political intervention in those interferences in those areas is what is of these projects to where they are today. Yes, the issue of construction, and also we need to take into account that whenever even you go to court days, that delay will also be able to help in that illegal construction that will be taking place.
Now, thank you. Now, Devson, the Transparency International Zimbabwe recently launched a study called Urban and Peri-Urban Land Governance in Zimbabwe towards a corrupt, free, transparent, and accountable system. Now, with what my mayors have been saying and Councilor Jele has been saying, do you think that there is a possibility to have a corrupt-free land management system in Zimbabwe?
Thanks, Blessed. It's possible. What I think when I say it's possible, I look at the magnitude of the corruption. So if we are able to reduce corruption by a certain percentage, for instance, for argument's sake, we can say 60% on land transaction, that is very possible. However, I would say that it is possible under certain conditions. And in a moment, the conditions say what is needed for us then to achieve a corrupt-free land governance system. Number one is that we need to look at how we incorporate peri-urban land in urban areas, because one of the most prevalent areas where we are having corruption is to deal with peri-urban land. So in order for us to preempt this kind of corruption, we need to do the following. One is we need to extend the boundaries of cities way ahead before certain pieces of land or certain pieces of peri-urban land are actually invaded by other elements. That's number one. Number two, we can also look at how we can empower the rural district councils in terms of giving them more planning powers, for instance, so that they can prepare the layout plans that are needed. They can subdivide in a proper manner following the legal statutes. Number three is that we need to work on the land delivery process, as I've indicated below. The proper land delivery process is for the minister responsible for local government to issue urban state land to local authorities for onward planning, development, and allocation. If we continue to have a dual process of land allocation, whereby we have two authorities, as highlighted by the mayors and councillors, where the ministry responsible for local government is issuing out land, and we also have local authorities issuing out land, we'll continue to have problems. So we need to sort that one out. The other area that we need to look at, maybe two other areas, is to look at how do we reform the cooperative movement. the cooperative movement, by and large, is responsible for a lot of infrastructure challenges that we are facing in urban areas. And I would suggest that one of the things that we need to look at is the reporting mechanism for housing cooperatives. There are many cooperatives. There are income-generating cooperatives, amongst others. I am specifically dealing with the housing cooperatives. How can we strengthen the legal framework so that these housing cooperatives are mandated to report both to the Ministry of Local Government and also to local authorities? At hand, housing cooperatives are largely dealt with the ministry responsible for SMEs. But the ministry responsible for SMEs has no knowledge of planning and housing in particular. So that's one area that we need to look at. The last area that we need to look at is to say, mistakes have been made in Caledonia, for instance, in Gimboki, in Mutare, in Country Park. How then do we begin to say, okay, we now need to move past the blame game? How do we then begin to address the infrastructure challenges that are being faced in these areas? I have two propositions that I would make. One is to begin to say, how can we have an infrastructure fund that all the residents in those cities can begin to contribute? Even if I don't live in Caledonia, challenges of public health, if they start in Caledonia, they will affect my house where I live in Haran. That's one area that we need to collectively think as residents, to take responsibility to say, this has been done. Let's begin to address these issues. Secondly, we can begin to say, does the seat of Harare have the capacity to deal with Caledonia or Harare South? Does the seat of Bulawayo have the capacity to deal with the Country Park? If we think that they don't have the capacity, can we then begin to suggest to say, any specialized agencies that can be created with funding from the national government itself and other areas to begin to address those challenges? So those are some of the things that I would do. I would suggest for us to have a corrupt-free land governance system.
Yeah, David, I just want you to address the issue of multiple management authorities. And in that report, Transparency International Zimbabwe says that this is one of the major problems. I think Councilor Rodney and Councilor Mayor Tandi actually spoke strongly about this. How do we converge and make sure that land is managed in a manner that does not have conflation of power and authority and interest?
This is a mammoth task, if I can say. Most of the challenges that we are facing are on state land. A number of reports, even the Uchena report, the Land Commission report, it concluded that the challenges that we are facing are on urban state land. And to that end, the government has lost about $3.3 billion on urban state land. So how then do we begin to deal with this? In the foreseeable future, I don't think we are going to have a solution for a number of reasons. Recall that if we look at the past 5 years, there have been a number of investigation reports, one in Chitungwiza in 2015. It concluded that state land was actually, there were lots of problems on urban state land, which is managed by the government. There was also a Caledonia report in 2015. It concluded the same. And we do have now the Uchena report. It concluded the same. So I would think for us to begin to have this conversation, we need the national government to be in charge because it is responsible for state land. Secondly, and most importantly, we need the ruling party to be involved in the debate to say, moving forward, how do we make sure that its role in urban state land management, directly or indirectly, is streamlined? So in the foreseeable future, I don't think that we are going to have a solution to this up until these two actors, the national government and the ruling party, begin to play out their respective roles in as far as sanitizing urban state land management is concerned.
Councillor Jele, Devson says that the state lost 3.5 billion. How much have you lost as Bulawayo in land transactions?
Okay, maybe in terms of figures, I don't have the real figures, but obviously, maybe just to buttress on that point, just to mention another point is that we also have a challenge of people acquiring land for speculative purposes. You realize that in Bulawayo you've got a ballooning waiting list of maybe over 120,000. And that list it keeps on growing, but we keep on unveiling land every year. But the challenge that we have is that people buy this land for speculative purposes, for business purposes. So that's another challenge that we have in terms of the residents themselves. We have residents that are not really honest. When at the end of the day, some of our residents don't benefit. Only the same people keep on benefiting each and every time.
If we are going to look, Councillor, at the pricing of land, especially at times where currency has been changing, how much has that affected local authorities in managing their land?
Yes, it has really affected us a lot, because you realize that as council, we are not allowed to force people to pay in forex. You realize that, for instance, in Bulawayo, a virgin land without servicing expenses, it will cost you around between 300 to 500 US dollars. But for a 200 square meter after servicing, it goes up to 4,000, 5,000 US dollars. So right now, when we are charging people, we are charging them on a bank rate, and someone comes and pays in RTGS. Probably you give the person maybe 3 months to pay deposit. After that 3 months, that money will be eroded by inflation. So what we have done right now is to invite private developers where we do a joint venture, where someone comes with his own money and service a certain piece of land, then he starts selling the land. Then at the end of the day, then when we are commissioning the land, we also take over the beneficiaries. At least a private developer can charge in forex, and people pay there in forex, so it's easy for him to manage the funds. But as a local authority, we are failing because we are almost like government. We are not allowed to charge any other currency, any other rate, and besides the bank rate. So we are really losing out a lot. There are certain schemes that we have, Makwekwe, Chabalala, where we are still failing to service, and we gave these people land. They bought land maybe in around 2016, 2015. Up to now, we are still failing to service those pieces of land because of inflation.
Yeah. Mayor Tandi, talk to me about this problem of currency. Does this also create fertile ground for corruption and rent seeking by local authorities?
Thank you very much. I think the issue of currency has affected a lot of operations in the local authority. Remember, all stand sales, resources or funds are banked in the estates account. And the role of the estates account is for recapitalizing further procurement of other pieces of land that may be surrounding or whatever the case. Now, in this hyperinflation period, remember, like what Councilor Jerry said, we may be able to sell pieces of land today in our Zimbabwean dollars. And if it means that person takes his time to pay, which means our estates account will continually not be replenished, it's continually losing value each and every day. And as much as we want to recapitalize, we are also rated with the rating system that is there, which means our money will lose value before we even recapitalize our local authorities. And now, taking into account that we asked also upon the issue that maybe management and councillors are taking into abusing the facility. Not at all. Most of our local authorities do abide by our policies that we have, whereby we have a housing policy that speaks to the allocation of land. And if it means maybe as policymakers, especially as councillors, we've done our part, and it will be left upon maybe our administration to sell the pieces of land or whatever the case may be. So what we usually do is we abide by the policies. But whenever what brought us to make is because there's abuse that would have happened. So it's not tantamount maybe to totality condonment, but there are certain areas whereby our people will come in to abuse the facility. But the holding of stands can be monitored and audited, especially from our internal audits and even our policy. Yes, here and there, abuse has been faced, especially like what Councilor Mtizwa had said upon the issue of Harare, whereby councillors were seen in the thick of things. But also on the same note, if we happen to check very well whether the abuse by councillors in land sales was an abuse or it was not an abuse, you also realize that there wasn't an abuse as such. Because I am a resident also, I can be able to buy a piece of land as a resident. And like what Councillor Jere said also in terms of the facility that was created for decent accommodation for councillors, that way we can be able to buy our pieces of land at 40%. And let you also be able to make it in courts once in a lifetime. And that's the facility that you can be able to have. And once in a lifetime, you buy a stand at 40%. And after that, maybe as a resident, you can be able to buy them at 100%. And usually, our policies in all local authorities doesn't allow a councillor or anybody else to buy 2 stands from the local authority from the council. If it means you bought a stand from local authority from high density suburb, it's done. Nothing more will be able to come to you. So those are some of the things that we live with or are trying to always try and implement as local authorities in land management. Yes, here and there is an abuse, but we have tried by all means to try and curb that corruption. But also, it's my question maybe to you. I would like to see, or maybe to be informed of 1 or 2 people that have been arrested or found guilty of the issue of corrupt land activities, unless or otherwise politicians that we are still roaming around in the streets.
Thank you very much, Mayor Tan. Councillor Jele, I wanted to ask this question here. We read in the media that your town clerk was renting land at $1 per month. Can you just share with us insights? How does that happen? How does someone rent a whole farm for money that's not enough to buy a loaf of bread?
Actually, it wasn't the town clerk, it was the mayor.
Yes, your mayor. Yeah, sorry, your mayor. How did you get to that?
So normally what happens is when one person applies for land, whatever piece of land you apply for, the city valuer puts a figure in terms of rental, or if you want to buy in terms of the current rates. So at that time, everyone around that place, because there are people actually leasing plots in that area, they were being charged the same amount as the mayor was being charged. You will recall that the challenge that we have, people were now rating that money using the black market rate at that time. But in terms of the bank rate, it was actually a lot of money. It wasn't that $1 that people were talking about. Like I was explaining earlier on, that we use the bank rate, we don't use the parallel market rate. So at that time, it was a lot of money using the bank rate. Because most of our plots that we lease out, those people pay around $20 equivalent. So at that time, we realized that we will have challenges using the bank rate, and there's a parallel rate outside. So now what we are doing is we are saying that $20, you pay it equivalent to the current bank rate. So whatever inflation comes in, you know that you are paying $20 for a certain piece of land for farming purposes. We just use the official rate on. So that was the issue at that time. But Mayor, who rents a farm or a plot for $20? What do you use the $20 for? I mean, these are small farms. They are actually not big farms because we are talking of maybe 2,000. I think the smallest is around 2,000 square meters. Then the biggest, it's around 10,000 square meters, if I'm not mistaken. That's the biggest. So it's almost about 2 acres, the biggest. The smallest, which is $20, is 2,000 square meters. So these are not big farms, no. They are small farms.
Devson, does this make sense to you, Devson?
Okay, thanks. Thanks. I think two points to make on that one. I think historically, what we know is that in the public sector and local authorities also included, the issue of sub-economic rents is always something that always happens in many countries. So it's not really unique to Bulawayo alone or to our local authorities alone. It's a problem that needs to be addressed at a holistic level to say, how do we make sure that a local authority charges economic rents on its properties? We know that even our local authorities, they do have a lot of flats and a lot of houses. And if you look at the amount of money that they generate from that, it's sub-economical. It's actually pittance. So that's the first point. Secondly, is to say that some of the things that we begin to look at again, a councillor is someone who is dignified. A councillor or a mayor, for instance, in Harare, they are in charge of around 296 million of our revenue. So what then this means is that we need someone who is well catered for to look after the resources that we pay. This then brings me to the point of saying, some of the things then that we begin to look at are actually normal, even in the private sector or so. So there are also some opportunities, or let me say some perks that are actually normal. We see that at the moment, you might see that a councillor or a mayor is actually getting something or less than $100. But that person is responsible for managing $300 million. So the point that I want to drive home is to say that we need to look at how we look at our mayors and our councillors. They are very important in as far as the progress of our cities is concerned. I do not share the view that councillors, they get a lot in terms of the allowances and what. I actually think that we need to review the allowances that our councillors and mayors get because of the task that they do have at hand. They are responsible for lots of resources. They are responsible for our water. They are responsible for public transport. They are responsible for housing. They are responsible for collecting our solid waste. So I think their upkeep is something that we should also put front and center.
Thank you, Jeff. Now, we have just run out of time, but I will give you an opportunity, starting from Mayor Thandi, to give us your closing remarks, your recommendations in terms of how we can improve peri-urban and urban land management, especially in the city of Mutare, so that we don't have these problems that we have on a monthly, weekly, daily basis. Mayor? Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My recommendation most probably will be in how we are able to parcel out the land. So that we don't have the confusion that is there or the competition that is there between central government and local government. We need to have a system whereby each and every piece of land, whenever being parceled out, should be in liaison with the service supplier, especially as of now, we'll be looking at local authorities who are within the jurisdiction. And we need also to take note that in the spirit of devolution that we are in now, and also is the spirit of devolution and also as the supply constitution, the local authorities should be given the mandate to either see to that any location that is sprouting within their periphery is sticking to the standards that are anticipated within of urban settlement. And we're also taking into account that even those rural district councils or state land, the local authorities periphery should be working in liaison with the local authorities. I think that can be able to assist in having infrastructure that is compliant to urban settlement. And also to allude to the issue that Jefferson spoke about, the issue of remuneration of councillors. I think some of the things that we are looking at as of now, the burden of the budget that is upon councillors is of tantamount importance, and the role that we play even in our communities. We are slightly different from members of party. What other one is presenting. There's no harm to that. But as local authorities, we cannot even miss a single meeting. I think there's need for us to reconsider the allowances to fellow councillors so that at least their lives can be changed. And also taking into account the issue that Devson spoke about when you spoke about the issue of the mayor of Bulawayo being charged $1, sub-economic values. We need to complement each other's effort. Remember, as councillors or council, we are only implementers of the budgets that could have been approved by our local people. If it means we charge economic values, our people do not have a buy-in to that. So there's a need for us also to take into account the economic value on everything, that on services that we'll be offering, so much that at least by the end of the day, we can be able to continually offer the services that we should be able to offer. Because the sub-economic value that we are charging as of now is also contributing a lot on the services of the local urban authority services that we are offering as we speak right now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jele, your concluding remarks?
Yeah, I think there is need for proper master plans within our urban setups. And obviously consultations when you're doing those master plans, we need to involve our surrounding RDCs when we are doing our master plans. Then also we need to have, I feel we need to have a housing policy which cuts across all the local authorities. And also maybe we also need to the issue of which Mayor Tandi talked about and Devson, the issue of taking care of the people that administrate our works. You talk of our councillors, you talk of our directors. So I think by doing that, we also lessen the issue of corruption. So I think those are my recommendations, the issue of the master plan, the issue of housing and the housing delivery policies.
Amazing. I want to come to you, Mayor Msalulwa. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Mayor, I had asked you a question before I allow you to do concluding remarks. You've been coming in and out, but I wanted to know, Mayor, if you had any computation that you have done this far to tell you how much Harare City Council or Harare residents have lost in the mismanagement of land in Harare.
Yes. Unfortunately, there's no computation that was done, but the disadvantage or prejudice is so big. Harare is Harare and is a capital city. Almost everyone would want to come and reside in Harare. So a round of misdemeanor happening in Harare in the process of computing whatever council lost in terms of the land disputes, land sales, and land theft that has been happening. And it was largely because, one, there was no clear land bank in our city. In most cases, the other land will be double or jointly owned by city or state. So someone can come tomorrow and say this is state land. Tomorrow the city will discover that it is their land when it is already taken away. And the Peri-Urban, the chiefs and what have you, also doing what they are now terming Garawajga, where they are selling the Peri-Urban land to whoever they feel they want to sell. Now, when the demarcations and the boundaries are extended, we are now meant to take over already pregnant places. So the prejudice, to be honest, is too big. But we are in the process of computing all that. And my comment on that one is we need to synchronize the authority allocating land. If we continue saying Minister of Housing will be distributing and dishing out land, Minister of Local Government is doing the same, local authorities doing the same, that is where the anomalies are coming from. Because at the end of the day, some of the structures that are going up overnight or whatever, like as if we are not seeing them, it is not clear who owns that land.
Yep, but I'll then also just ask you to give your concluding remarks. What's the way forward for Harare and Zimbabwe?
The way forward for Harare is that we would want to have a very explicit land policy, and where everyone is subjected to the same process, regardless your position, even in government or in council, you need to be subjected to the same policy, and that policy must be followed.
Thank you very much, Mayor Msarura Tizwa. But Devson, you are the expert in the House. You have heard the recommendations, you have heard what the mayors feel.
We must have our standard operating procedures, the SOPs, in place, and they must be religiously followed. In some cases, the SOPs were not followed. The reason why they are to follow the standard procedures.
Okay, Jefferson, can you just give us, standard best practice, and also just, getting into the recommendations that have been given by the mayors from the different cities and see how we compare and how these recommendations could probably be best practice or not workable? Okay,
thanks very much for that. I think the key challenge that we have been facing in our local authorities has to do with the performance of the economy. You recall that before 2000, any piece of land, you would only be allowed to build after all the infrastructure has actually been built. But because of economic challenges, we kind of had to actually reverse the procurement process of housing, whereby you have to start to settle first. You build your house, then you think of where you are going to get your water and your sewer, and amongst others. So when I look at the recommendations that have been put forward by the mayors and the council, I think the key thing that all of them are pointing at is the actually on land allocation authorities, to say how do we synchronize local authorities and the ministry responsible for local government that is responsible for issuing out state land. It would seem that for political economy reasons, the current system is expected to continue in the foreseeable future. I don't think that there will be political will to actually allocate state land to local authorities, for local authorities for onward transmission to beneficiaries. So we need to budget for an environment whereby the status quo is expected to continue for over time. However, how do we minimize the damage in such an environment? There are certain things that we can look at. For instance, if we would ask the national government authorities to be proactive with regards to peri-urban land, to extend urban boundaries in time, so that the local authorities are in charge for planning and development before occupation. The national authorities, they can also look at how do they capacitate the rural district councils so that they can plan and manage the peri-urban areas in a more proactive way. That's something that is tangible and within reach, I think, of the national authorities. The other thing that they can begin to think of, again, we can begin to think of how can we have an infrastructure fund at each city level that every resident contribute into. We have heard that the estate account is undercapitalized. We also know that in terms of capital expenditure for our local authorities is very low. So moving forward, how do we coalesce as residents to have an infrastructure fund that is ring-fenced, that will then try to address some of the challenges that we have in urban areas? I think at this moment, for us to continue saying the mistakes were made, we need to acknowledge that. We should be in a mood whereby we are beginning to look at solutions to address what has been the challenges or the mistakes that have been made over 15 years ago. That's what I would say, Blessed, in terms of some of the things that I think are necessary in as far as addressing land challenges in urban areas are concerned.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Jefferson. Now, we have been having this land indaba with the mayor of Mutare, the mayor of Harare, and the future mayor of Bulawayo, Councilor Rodney Jele. And when you sit down, councillors and mayors, to allocate land, don't forget me. You know. But anyway, thank you very much, DevSon, for the for your expertise, and our apologies for waking you up very, very early in the morning. Thank you very much from Bulawayo for coming through, Councilor Rodney Jele. Hoping to see you as hoping to see you as the next mayor of the city of Bulawayo. Councillor, His Worship the Mayor of Mutare, thank you very much for joining us on this show that's brought to you by Transparency International Zimbabwe and Heart and Soul TV and radio. Mayor Msarurwa, thank you very, very much. Now, this was the situation right now brought to you by Transparency International Zimbabwe and Heart and Soul TV and radio. We are talking to the land issue. Osaya Chipanga from Mashingo saying, Ivura rakatakatora nderipiko. You know, so issues of land are close to the heart of the people of Zimbabwe. Issues of land management are very critical, and once we have a standpoint and a position that ensures a transparent way of managing land, we will be able to save Zimbabweans, home seekers, hard-earned money, which they are fleeced by land barons and at times by city council officials. Now, this was the panel discussing, so how do we manage the land? So who steals the land? We will continue to engage with viewers and with those in charge of our land and experts like Dr. DevSon. Thank you very much. Until next time, I am your host, Dara Blessed Mhlanga, on Heart and Soul TV and radio in proud partnership with Transparency International Zimbabwe.
Baba moyo chigwe chitedza babango iwe dunde lipiko